Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 1 simply says, if a man marries a woman and she no longer finds favor in his eyes because he found something wrong with her or something unclean or indecent in her, he can write her a certificate of divorce, put it in her hand, and send her away. What does it mean when it says unclean or indecent? And what are the schools of thought regarding that term, indecent or unclean? Find out in While You're Single TV, the channel for single adults who desire godly relationships. Welcome to part 2 of how to get started in godly relationships. Last time I mentioned Deuteronomy 24 verse 1, where it says that a man could divorce his wife if he found something unclean in her. So what does it mean by unclean or indecent? There were two schools of thought in the Jewish tradition about what it meant to be indecent. These schools were connected to two rabbis, and these rabbis are Rabbi Shammai and Rabbi Hillel. Rabbi Shammai was of the view that indecent meant adultery. In other words, a man could divorce his wife if she committed adultery. That was what indecent meant. The other school of thought was by Rabbi Hillel. Rabbi Hillel was more liberal. He was like basically the man could divorce his wife for any reason. In fact, even if she burnt his food, he could divorce her. That was Rabbi Hillel's view. With that in mind, when the Pharisees came to Jesus to entrap him, they basically, in a sense, were trying to find out whether he sided with Shammai or Hillel or even Moses. So Jesus is, in a sense, is in a quandary. He's in a situation. If he says yes for adultery, the people that follow Hillel will be offended. If he said for any reason divorce could happen, the Shammai's camp will be offended. And if Jesus said, no, you can't divorce, then he's coming against what Moses said. So Jesus is in a situation here. Besides, I don't know if you noticed something about the question the Pharisees posed Jesus. They said, could a man divorce his wife? And Moses said in Deuteronomy 24 verse 1, that if a man marries a woman and he found something wrong with her because she was indecent or did something indecent or unclean, he could divorce his wife. Notice the emphasis is on the man divorcing his wife and not the wife divorcing her husband. The reason why this is the case is because the Jewish tradition, especially in Old Testament times, only men could divorce their wives. Women were viewed as property to be discarded at the whims of a man. Only men could divorce women. Women could not divorce men. Perhaps you're familiar with the story in John chapter 8 verses 1 to 11, the story of the woman caught in the act of adultery. If you're familiar with the story, perhaps you're one of those who wondered how come everybody wanted to stone the woman and nobody said anything about her accomplice. Nobody said anything about the man. The reason that nobody said anything about the man was because the mindset, the Jewish mindset at the time, was that the problem was the woman, not the man. Whatever the man did wrong is because the woman influenced him. That was the mindset. The woman was the problem, and that's why she was thrown under the bus. So, not only is Jesus being set up to say something that may offend Shammai's camp, offend Hillel's camp, offend the law of Moses, but he is also dealing with the injustices that women faced. And Jesus responded in Mark chapter 10 verse 5. First he said, Moses permitted divorce because of the hardness of your heart. First and foremost, this is not necessarily part of what I wanted to share with regard to getting started in godly relationships, but it's something that is important for us to know. If you want to get started in a godly relationship, you can't have a hard heart. Hard Hard-heartedness and hard-headedness is not going to help you have a godly relationship. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of godly relationships, just have that in mind. You can be hard-hearted or hard-headed if you want to be successful in a godly relationship. Nevertheless, Jesus said, from the beginning, God created them male and female so that they are no longer one, but two. He basically bypassed all the stuff they were talking about. Forget about Shammai, forget about Hillel, forget about Moses. Let's go to the beginning, or should I say, let's go to the start. That's where the idea for getting started in relationships comes from. So if you want to get started in a godly relationship, why don't you just go to the start of the way God intended it to be? And we're going to do that next week.